Welcome, everyone. Today I'm talking to Will Parker Anderson, a senior editor at WaterBrook Multnomah, about what it means to conceive of, to write, to seek to publish, to market Christian nonfiction. So, Will, thanks for having this conversation with me.
Absolutely, Andy. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk with you.
As an introduction, can you just walk people into what you do and how you got into the world of publishing?
So, my title is senior editor. I work at WaterBrook in Multnomah, which is part of Penguin Random House. And I edit primarily adult nonfiction. And I have an interesting path, I think, into publishing. It's a little unorthodox. So, the way that I have learned to summarize it is that I'm a journalist turned pastor, turned part time DJ, turned theology teacher, turned freelance writer, turned now professional editor. So, that's my zigzag journey in a nutshell.
Because why not?
Exactly.
There you
That's
are
all the things.
DJing, and you think, you know what follows naturally from this?
Exactly. Yep.
We met through your writing podcast called The Writer's Circle. I love it. I'm a big fan. I find the thing I love most about it is the way you walk people through the conversations with wisdom and gentleness and just great questions. So I'm feeling the pressure today now that the shoe is on the other foot.
Yeah,
Can you
absolutely. It was really fun to have you on the show. I still think for those listening, if you want to hear some of Andy's wisdom, we talked about how to think about if you're called to write, and you led us through these five helpful points and questions we can ask. So just a little plug there about your interviews on my show.
And what is the Writer Circle all about? Why did you start it? What do you hope to convey to writers through it?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's a lot of fantastic writing podcasts out there, but specifically what I wanted to do is to hone in on number one, nonfiction writers. And so I interview all kinds of folks from, authors, some just starting out, some pretty established, editors, publishing professionals, marketers. And the goal is to help nonfiction writers sharpen their skills and publish their work, all for the glory of God. And I named it Writer Circle because as an editor, I have a lot of folks who reach out to me. They have questions about publishing. They're not sure how it works. And they're oftentimes frustrated because they don't feel like they can get access to the next step or the information that they need. And I just kept getting this sense that publishing sometimes feels like an elite inner circle. And unless you do something noteworthy or you're accomplished in some way, you're not welcome to join. And so a lot of writers feel like they're trapped on the outside and they're unsure how to take their next step. And I just said, well, what if instead of this elite inner circle where it's like a who's in, who's out club, what if we all just got in a circle, which is where we learn, exchange ideas, share expertise? And what if we're generous with the knowledge that we have as publishing insiders? And, a lot of the folks I interview are on their fifth, sixth, 10th book. What if we just are really generous with what we know to help those that are starting out find their way? And what I've realized, though, a huge portion of the audience are aspiring authors, but a lot of them are also published authors. And that's been a fun discovery for me. A lot of them just enjoy the conversation, and they've shared more than anything. This show is an encouragement and it fuels that creative spark that they need to keep going. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a ton of fun. I love just talking with folks who love words, people like yourself, Andy. And yeah, that's what the Writer Circle is all about.
Yeah, I love the idea of being generous with insider knowledge because
Hmm.
it can seem like such an opaque world. We
Yes.
have our culture tells us stories about what it means to be a writer, and there's this kind of romantic notion of, I sit at my computer and clock out this story, and beyond that, what happens? Well, I guess someone somewhere who works for some publisher will care, will find me somehow, and then something will
That's
happen.
right.
It's just like totally opaque. So the Writer's
Yeah,
Circle podcast it's a bit of a peek behind the curtain, which I love.
it is. Yeah, it's It's a balance of, I think, practical advice, even tactical, like what's happening in the landscape of publishing. How can you market your ideas? And hopefully to take some of that sliminess off words like marketing and publicity and promotion, and to really, reframe those ideas as serving people, packaging your ideas in ways that don't water down the message, but take seriously the reality of the mediums in which we have to function today, which is things like social media, things like this, where we're on a podcast. Some writers fills them with trepidation to think about, having to talk for an hour, but it's those types of things that I want to give folks real practical tools so that, if they're romanticizing the process, we can then break it down so it's not overwhelming. But the other part is just nourishing our love for the craft. And there's a balance there. So really encouraging people to write because they love it, and to write things that mean a lot to them. And then maybe secondarily ask the publishing question, because I think there's a lot more writers who are called to write, but maybe not publish a book than there are vice versa. So yeah, I love
Yeah.
just the multifaceted conversations we get to have, everything from marketing to just craft, to everything in between.
Okay, we are going to try to use the rest of this conversation to shed some light on this mysterious process of what happens in order to create a work of nonfiction and then to get it published. So we have the expert here. So we don't bury the lead. Can you, here's a question for you. Many people come to your proverbial door and knock on it with a book idea. And can you speak to those people now? What's the one best piece of advice you would give them to help prepare them for success in that journey to publishing?
Yeah, that's a great question. You're absolutely right. I think a lot of editors experience this. I do get a lot of knocks on the door, mostly through DMs and emails. And folks are just wondering if I might be interested in reading their proposal or their manuscript, and if I might want to publish it. And I really respect people with the boldness and tenacity to send messages like that. The problem is we just get so many of them. And so maybe to like bust a myth for a second, a publishing myth, I think a lot of writers assume that editors are just desperate for proposals, and we're constantly scouting for ideas, when in reality, our desks are typically overflowing with them. And it's like, we're just trying to sift through all that has landed on our desk. So here's what I would say. Number one, at most larger publishers, reputable publishers, proposals come through literary agents. And that's important to know because it's a built-in vetting system. In other words, for me as an editor, when I'm getting a proposal from an agent, that immediately tells me, okay, this agent, they only get paid, so to speak, if they land this author a book deal. So they're only going to take on projects that they realistically think have a shot. And that's best for everyone. So as a writer, if an agent says, hey, I think you need to go back and work more on this proposal, that's actually helpful to you as the writer because it's sharpening you and it's challenging you to hone your concept even more. They want you to break through the noise. And then for me as an editor, it just allows me to know, okay, this is coming from an agent. I should take this seriously. And just the pure volume of book ideas that come at us, it's very helpful for those agents to deliver vetted manuscripts. So I think just to back up even a second, for a writer who wants to get published, I think talking with editors is a great idea. But rather than pitching your idea for your book, my suggestion would be something like talk to the editor about what your goal is. Give them a sense of where you're at with your platform and what you're already publishing. And then ask a question like, what do you think would be a smart next step for me? Or what are 3 things that I could be doing in the next 6 months? Something like that. And so rather than expecting to walk out of the meeting with a book deal, which rarely happens, instead hope to emerge with a next step. And I've just found, I probably talk with someone who wants to get published at least once a week. A friend will connect me, I'll get an email, and something in the email will just stick out to me, a warmth or I don't know, just something. And I love talking with writers. And so, but I always make sure to clarify with them, hey, this isn't for you to pitch your book, but I would love to give you any feedback I can and give you my honest assessment of where you're at. And I've found that the writers who take that advice and run with it and maybe cross check my advice with a few other folks, they end up succeeding in one way or another. And I heard from a writer about 2 months ago that he had landed a book deal, and I've been walking with him for about 2 years. And
Hmm.
it's just, man, that was such a fun email to get. So that would be one aspect of it. But you asked, is there one piece of advice?
Yeah,
And I would, yeah,
find I'm hearing you say find a way to cut through some of the noise. And the work may not be done if you write a book, send off a book proposal, and cross your fingers. So you're talking about
yeah,
finding an agent who can almost be an intermediary between the writer and the publisher, who can say, "Hey, listen, Will, I've got something you need to pay attention to." Take someone out to coffee and just say, "Here's my pitch. Do you have any thoughts for me?"
yeah, yeah, that's really good. A book that I would encourage folks to look at is called The Mom Test by Rob Kirkpatrick. It's a book all about how to get feedback, honest feedback about your ideas without actually saying what your idea is. Now that might sound crazy, but the problem is if you go to your friends or other writers and you're like, "Hey, I have this book idea. Here it is. What do you think?" They immediately have pressure to not disappoint you and to not hurt your feelings, even if they're an editor and they're used to giving sort of blunt feedback. They may couch it. They may inside be thinking, I don't think that book's going to work, but they're going to say out loud, "Oh, I like that. But here's a few tweaks," when what they really mean is this thing, no way. And so the Mom Test is a great read. I read it all the way through on like a 2 to 3 hour flight a couple weeks ago. And I found it fascinating because there are ways of talking with folks to get their real thoughts on your topic without
Mm.
even telling them, "This is a book idea. By the way, my heart and soul rests upon your feedback right now. Don't crush me." You can actually eliminate that pressure. So that's an aside, but I really
Mhm.
would recommend that book as a way of honing your ideas in a way that's less pressure on others and actually gets you more accurate intel so that you can go back and revise your pitch.
So we're getting into a little bit about the topic of how do you make sure the idea, the pitch, the book is ready? Like, are there things I can do now that will make it more likely to enter into this publishing journey?
Yeah.
Would you recommend people start writing or focus on proposing? Like, should I find the relationship with the publisher first and the agent, or should I focus on the ideas, the content, the actual writing?
Yeah. Well, such a great question. And there's a lot of nuances. When you say, should I start writing now? I think what most people are going to hear is, should I start writing my manuscript now? And I would say maybe. If you're a fiction writer, yes. If you're a nonfiction writer, I would actually propose self-publishing micro content now rather than pouring hours into a manuscript. And I say that because I've met many writers who have, in one instance, he had written 100,000 plus words. That's a lot. That's almost double the average nonfiction trade book. And so he had written over 100,000 words and none of it ended up being useful. And that's heartbreaking for him, for everyone involved. And the reason it wasn't usable is because he hadn't gotten quality feedback along the way that could
Hmm.
have easily, steered him to just a different format altogether, would have saved his
Hmm.
project and would have saved a lot of time. So it's easy to romanticize the publishing process. Like, oh, if I land a book deal, I'll break out as a writer. All these people are going to flock to my book because I'm official, I'm legit, my name's on the cover. But let me just punch a few holes in that logic, and then I'll circle back to why you should self publish micro content. So, number one,
Okay, let's hear it.
most writers who land book deals don't sell many books. That's a real bummer, I know, but
That's such a bummer.
it is. It's still an incredible accomplishment and it's still worth pursuing. But I'm not diminishing the value of publishing a book at all. I'm just saying most don't sell a lot of copies. So your
I
name on a
suppose that
cover,
that would also
okay.
really underscore the need to have a really tight understanding of why you're doing this. Are you doing it to make lots of money and sell copies and get on the New York Times bestseller list?
Yeah.
Are you doing it for other reasons?
Yeah, that's great. Like, what success is such a flimsy word. So, what does that mean to you? Part of it, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to sell a lot of copies of a book. Ultimately, we write because we want the maximum number of people to be helped. We feel like the Lord has given us something to say, and that's noble to want to get that book out into the world. But simply publishing in and of itself will not guarantee that that's going to happen.
Sure.
So, what I say is the best way to prepare for publishing a book or a marathon is you run a little bit each day. You get in good writing shape. And there's so many benefits to this. Um, Number one, the only way to know who your true fans are and the subjects that they actually are interested in is to beta test. And so rather than writing 100,000 words by yourself at your desk and then sort of having a grand reveal to the world only to find, oh, no one's actually that interested in this,
Mm,
a better way is to publish micro content, as I said. And so maybe you take a couple paragraphs of a chapter and you post that somewhere. You send it in an email. Maybe you take your big idea of the chapter and you test that somewhere on social media, but it's getting your words out there. It's practicing in public. That is such a healthy rhythm and an important part of
mm,
preparation. And again, I just see a lot of writers feeling like they have to perfect everything before they show it to the world. And
mm,
as is it Austin Kleon's book, Show Your Work, just says, nope, practice in public, get it out there. It's gonna thicken your skin as you get pushbacks. It's
mm,
going to help you identify what's resonating, and you can actually lean into that. And what I've found, it's rarely what you think it's going to be. Like the thing that hits is rarely what you anticipated. Now, some people have just incredible instincts. I think they're the anomaly. For the rest of us, we really have to test things. And this is an organic, lest this sound overly, clinical. It's very organic, but it's
mm.
just like if you're speaking to a room of people, you don't want your head down in the notes, droning on in a monotone. You want to be present. You want to be looking around, making eye contact, feeling the room. And in the same way with our writing, the only way to know what's resonating is to put your stuff out into the world. So it's a long answer, Andy, but
That's a
how to
good answer.
prepare. Yeah, that's the best way to prepare, I think, is to just put as much content out there that aligns with what your book would be about and see what happens.
I feel like we could camp out on that topic for the rest of this conversation. When you say start publishing micro content, you gave us a few examples of what that could look like, but do you have any other, what have you seen people do? You're talking about dropping something onto Facebook just to see what kind of dialogue it brings up. What else, what else can happen?
Yeah, well, something I often encourage writers to do is to systematize their output, to create a schedule. And so step one is, not just to post willy-nilly whenever you feel like it. What that's going to end up doing is you'll be sporadic at best, but very inconsistent at worst. And so it's saying, yeah, maybe it's starting a newsletter. You could do that through Substack. You could do that through any one of the many email newsletter platforms.
Mm,
It could be something like Facebook, even Instagram. A lot of folks use words, like written words there and carousels.
yeah.
If you're comfortable on camera, yeah, it could be some of those, for me, dreaded, video centric platforms like Instagram, TikTok. There's Book Talk. that is huge, where people are selling a ton of books. There's something for everyone. I personally gravitate towards Substack because it is word centered. There's not a ton of video. There's not even a ton of images. It's really the word on the page that resonates for folks there, and that's more my speed. But there's truly something for everyone out there. But yes, that's what I mean by sort of drip feeding content regularly. And we have an incredible freedom today to publish whenever we want. It's kind of a scary amount of power, but we can wield that responsibly by, yeah, putting something out once a week, every other week. It really depends on the medium, but yeah, testing the waters using the tools that are at our disposal today, I think, is super wise. You could also, those are all social media examples. So you could also publish at the Rabbit Room. You could publish at name your website or publication of choice. That has the added bonus of vetting your writing, and you have to convince someone to publish your stuff, which
Yeah.
that's a great experience and experiment in and of itself.
And I guess you're also putting yourself in the way of both developing the habits of writing that it will take to write a book,
Yeah.
and as external practices, and also developing the kind of, like you said, thick skin when, if you do publish the book, having some of the emotional resources to deal with what that might be like. Positive reviews, negative reviews, interacting with people over this thing that you've poured your heart and soul into,
Yeah.
and
That's right.
not being either, I don't know, puffed up or crushed. You might as well start doing those things throughout the process.
Yeah. That's right. And for me, there would be nothing scarier than landing a nonfiction book contract. Most people don't realize this, but as nonfiction writers, you don't write the whole book until you land the contract in most cases. So you've written a chapter or two or three, but 70, 80% of the book remains yet to be written. Nothing would be scarier than landing that book deal and then suddenly knowing, okay, in the next 6 months, I have to write this whole manuscript. If you haven't already been practicing and building that endurance as a writer, if you're expecting to just turn it on in that moment, now when there's a deadline and real pressure, I
Mm.
think that could just overwhelm lots of folks. And so again, it's just going to serve you in so many ways as you practice in public again and again and again, not knowing when your opportunity might come to get published, but getting ready. One of my favorite writers recently said he wrote in obscurity for 10 years just because he loved it, wasn't trying to really publish anything, but all of that investment paid off and his career took off more quickly than most. But because he had that long runway and he had built that habit, it was effortless for him. Well, I shouldn't say effortless. It was intuitive for him. It was a lot of work,
Mm.
but it was just cool to hear that backstory that he had so diligently been pursuing his craft when no one was watching.
Yeah. Um, you use the metaphor of this journey as a marathon. Let's stick with that. Stick with that imagery. Can you walk us through, where does this marathon start? Where do I have to show up to start the race, and where's the finish line, and what is the course between? Because this is getting into some of this opaque insider stuff that I'd love for you to just kind of turn on the light and show us what it looks like.
Yeah, turn on the light. We'll let the roaches scatter. Yeah, my friend Steve describes publishing a book not as a marathon, but as a triathlon. And I really like this analogy. So let me just lay out the three legs of the triathlon. Stage one is landing the book deal. Stage two of the race is writing the book. And stage three is marketing the book. I just find that distinction really helpful because I think it's more of a two-step process or even a one-step process in most writers' minds. They think either two-step process, I pitch the book, I write it, and that's it. And then everything else just sort of happens. Or maybe some even reduce it down to one where they just say, I just published this thing. And it's like somehow it just gets out there into the world, and they write it along the way or something. And so it's really the third stage that catches a lot of writers off guard. They feel winded coming out of stage 2 writing, and they think, whew, okay, the book's done. It's been edited. We've got a cover. My work is done. Now the publisher's going to ship it out. And what they don't always see coming is that third stage, which is marketing your book, that just knocks the wind out of them because
Mm,
it's a lot of work. And so, Andy, I'm happy to walk back through those 3 stages in more
yeah.
detail and really build out what they look like if that's helpful. But just even at the front end to know, okay, it's a lot of work for stage 1, landing the book deal. Of course, writing is a slog, stage 2, but then stage 3, you're looking at several months minimum of really hitting it hard, promoting, doing all the things. So yeah, let me
Yeah.
know where you want me to zoom in, and I'm happy to.
Let's dive into all 3 of those. I'd love to just get some of your observations, your knowledge, your best practices on each stage. But you're right, it's helpful to even know that there are 3 stages. I think most people would say writing a book has 1 stage, and that is writing a book. But actually,
And then
there's a
it
stage
sits there.
before that and a stage after that.
Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah,
let's go into stage 1, landing a book deal. So in the kind of publishing we're talking about today, as you've said, you generally want to focus on the ideas in the proposal before you even really start writing.
yeah, yeah.
Walk me through that, practice that mentality.
Absolutely. Yeah, and this is all under the banner of traditional publishing. If you're wanting to pitch to a traditional publishing house and you're not going to self-publish this, yeah, stage 1, landing a book deal is no small feat, but of course, it starts with the idea that you have, and there's something that has gripped you. There's a message that you want to share or a story that you want to tell. And so step 1 is really honing down who you're writing to. Like, is there an audience for this message? That's a hard question to answer. And that goes back to what we were saying about practicing in public and seeing if there's traction there. But this is a lot of what I help writers do. So I have a book proposal course, and a big part of it is taking an idea and testing it and seeing, okay, really sharpening the hook and identifying who you're writing to, and making sure that you're finding your niche so that you're not saying exactly what someone else is saying. So it starts with your concept and coming up with an outline and really the hook of your idea. But from there, you're going to these could come in different order, but you're going to need a book proposal. A book proposal is essentially the pitch deck for your book idea, a summary of it. There's a lot that goes into that. So sometimes people will start there, but you're also going to want a literary agent. And so you're going to want someone to represent you, and they will take your book proposal and they'll help you refine it. And then they'll send it out to as many publishers as they can.
Hmm.
And it's so helpful because they have connections and relationships they mostly have built over years. And so they're going to get you in the door at these publishers and say, hey, so and so's got this book. Here's their proposal. Here's why you should take it seriously. I really think that this could be a fit for your publishing house. I think a lot of readers are going to come to this book. So if that goes well, then you'll set up meetings with publishers one at a time, and they'll just ask you about your book, get to know you. I really enjoy these conversations as an editor because I get to dig into someone's idea and just share with them, here's what I love about your idea. Here's some just initial editorial thoughts. And you're kind of feeling each other out. Like, do they hate my advice as an editor? From the writer's perspective, yeah, you would get to hear the vision that certain publishers have for the book, and you might love the vision some have and be a little bit more hesitant about others. So those are great conversations to have. It's a mutual interview. They're getting to know you, you're getting to know them. And then if one or multiple publishers make an offer, then what your agent will help you do is to negotiate your contract. And you get paid to write. It's the most amazing thing in the world. It's a real privilege. And so your agent's going to make sure that No publisher is trying to take advantage of you. Any industry that serves the interests of the artist, I'm a fan of. So while it stings as an editor sometimes, like let's say there's a project I really love and I'm trying to acquire it, but there's three other publishers that are vying for it as well. And we're all trying to make our offer better and better through each round. Um, as much as that can sting and it's a pain and it's a lot of, admin, at the end of the day, I celebrate it because it means that a writer is getting paid well to release their thoughts into the world. And so all of that is part of stage one.
So
So
it's an agent's job to um, be the book's champion and be the author's champion.
I would say the agent's job primarily is to be the author's champion. And then I would say and there's overlap here, but then I'd say the editor is really the champion of the book itself, the one that's really shaping it and getting it to where it needs to be. But as a side note, I view myself as a big fan of all my authors, and the relational aspect is one of my favorite parts of the job. So I'm not just coldly editing this document. I'm in conversations with them. I'm sending voice memos back and forth with a lot of them. I'm coaching them through the difficult moments. I'm affirming their gifts and what my favorite moments of the manuscript, So, yeah, it's very relational. But yeah, agents are absolutely the primary champions of authors.
So take us into that stage two. You're already leading us into that editorial process. What can you say about that? You get a deal, and then it's off to the races.
It's off to the races. What a moment, right? After all these conversations, all the time and effort you put into your book, now you open up Microsoft Word or Ulysses or Google Doc, whatever, and there's that blinking cursor, and it's like, wow, now I got to get ideas down. That can be a really daunting moment, but chances are, if you've made it to this stage, you're prepared for it. You've got a strong outline for your book that would be in your proposal. You've thought so much about it. You've had a chance to literally out loud articulate your book to these publishers and explain the core of your idea. So now you got to write the thing, and usually you get, give or take, 6 to 9 months to do that. And then from there, you go into multiple rounds of revisions with your editor. And that's the fun part. I had an author, he used a great analogy. He's like, the editing process is like laying cement. A lot of authors, they're the most nervous when they get the first round of revisions. So like, oh my gosh, what's the editor going to say? But he's like, actually, this author was telling me the cement is wettest and still the most malleable at that stage. It's really when you get to like the final rounds of editing that everything is set in stone. The deadline's upon you. So you can no longer just rearrange the whole outline, cut chapters. There's not time to write new ones. So there's increasing permanence and urgency. On the front end, there's a ton of malleability, and it's a really fun process. So yeah, that's stage 2 is writing, which includes editing, and it also includes your cover design and landing on the look, the aesthetics of, the outside cover, front and back. And then also you're going to start in stage 2, probably after you're done writing, but I would still put it in stage 2, is you're going to prepare with your publisher's help a marketing and publicity strategic plan, basically your launch campaign. And you're going to start thinking through, all right, how do we get the word out about this book? So that's kind of lumped in at the tail end of that stage 2 of the triathlon.
Yeah. It's encouraging to hear you say that for you, the editing part is the fun part. So you're engaging with the author in a way that, well, I'm sure for a lot of authors, that's the scary part. I've done this thing. I now have to deliver. I am giving this precious manuscript over to someone who has some degree of control over it. Can you give us some more details about, from your experience, what's that back and forth like? What's that author editor relationship like?
On both sides, it takes real emotional maturity. Like any creative endeavor, you're dealing with something that's precious to them. And sometimes as an editor, it's like, I'm trying to also bring my knowledge of where the market is, just some of the fundamentals of what makes readers keep turning the page, and
Mm.
trying to really come together to make this book the best that it can be. And what I've discovered is that first time authors do tend to have a lot of nervousness coming in, but the most mature authors, and I would say some of the most gifted authors that I've worked with, they welcome the editorial process. It's an interesting paradox. Those that are the best at what they do, this is true, I think, in all arenas, not just writing. Those who are the most gifted are also the most eager for feedback. And they'll actually have a number of experts in their corner pushing back, poking holes in things, challenging them because they know that they've seen how much it improves what they do. And they're
Mm.
kind of addicted to that in a good way. They're like, wow, I've been through the editorial process. I know that it moves my manuscript from good to great. And I know I can't get there on my own. And so it's this amazing synergy that's possible. And my responsibility as an editor is to be completely honest, of course, with my feedback. So not holding back what I think, but to also communicate in a way that is kind, charitable, and also to defer to the author's final conclusion on anything that I suggest. So I'm not forcing my ideas onto the book. I'm always in suggestion mode. I live in the margins, and I think that's really important to what I do.
Will, you mentioned that cover design is part of this stage 2 process. So can you walk us through what does that look like? How much control does the publisher have? How much control does the author have? What's that interaction like?
Yeah, that's a great question. The cover process, I'm sure, differs from publisher to publisher, but some commonalities are probably, you know, we want the author to be really happy with the design, of course. However, we have a whole sales team that their whole job is to watch the market, see what kind of covers are working well, and to then feed back those learnings into the cover design process. And so it's kind of a combination, a hybrid of what the author likes, but then also what the author needs to get this book in front of
Mm.
the most people. And so, yeah, it's like anything, there's compromise involved. But in most covers I work on, it really is the author driving the look and feel. Like, do we want it to be type driven, image driven, what colors and fonts, and a lot of that is in their wheelhouse. And then certain genres lend themselves to certain types of covers. And so we're looking at what other books exist in this same genre that have done well, and what do those covers look like? What was working for them? All of that has to be a balance of sales, knowledge, aesthetic preference, and teamwork, between author, editor, designer, sales, marketing. Like, everyone has a say, and that's a good thing. Sometimes you can feel like there's too many chefs in the kitchen. In this case, everyone's kind of putting their little handprint on it, and then by the end it's like, wow, this is really good. Even like the copy on the back, what the short little paragraph that explains what the book is, to have multiple perspectives all feeding in, weighing in on that, only serves the book. And that collaborative piece, I think, makes covers work well. So it's fun.
This is kind of taking us into the whole marketing question, which is the third leg of your triathlon. So
Yeah.
guide us into what it takes to succeed in the bit that happens after you've turned in your manuscript.
Yes. So just as a reminder of what I was saying earlier, writers, save some breath, save some energy, and some time for the third leg, because you're really going to need it. And the third stage is, yeah, as you said, marketing your book. It starts, I don't know, it depends on the publisher, but 6 months out from your on sale date, you're going to start thinking through and making a plan on how to get the word out. And so at the publisher I work for, you're assigned a marketer and a publicist, and their job is really to help you get the word out. And it's an amazing thing. It's wind in your sails to have experts who are advocating for you. So a publicist is going to get you on podcasts and interviews. And if you're a speaker, help you land some of those opportunities. And they're going to put all of that together in a plan that is going to start, you'll start doing some of those things as well. Posting on social media is another one. A couple months before your book goes on sale, and you're going to try to get as many pre-orders as possible. Then from the on sale date, you're really going to kick into full publicity, because then the book's available and people can buy it. And so that's when you're going to be doing a lot of interviews. An extreme case, to give people an idea, I say extreme because I don't think most authors do this many, but one author I work with did 80 podcast interviews in a span of 3 months. And that's a lot, clearly.
That's a lot.
And he's extremely hardworking, extremely motivated. But yeah, you're looking at probably minimum 20 or so interviews, something like that. You might also have some guest posts where you take an excerpt from the book and you publish it somewhere, book reviews, and email marketing campaigns. So I've heard it said that you should invest 50% of your total energy writing the book, and that next 50%, remaining 50%, should be spent promoting and marketing. And I think that's about right. It's easy to feel like the work is done, as we said earlier, once the manuscript is finished, but really there's a lot more work to be done, because what good does an excellent book do if no one hears about it? How will they hear about it unless someone tells them about it? And how will you tell them about it if you aren't pulling some levers with the help of marketing and publicity? But like all the other stages, our partnership, this is a partnership as well. So it's not a publisher working a miracle for you. They're going to work hard for you as an author, but they're also expecting that you're bringing some of your platform to the table as well and telling your audience about it. And it's in that partnership that books do really well, when both publisher and author are working hard and working together.
To stick with the race analogy, if you think you're coming to the finish line and somebody jogs up and says, actually, you're about halfway, that can break your spirit. But if you had expected to go the whole distance from the start, that's your mentality. For on the marketing question, let's say I've signed with you, we've gone through the whole editing process. We have a perfect manuscript that it's time to share with the world. Obviously I'm the one going on the podcast. Am I also the one finding the podcast, finding the publications to excerpt the book, all that? What's the interplay there with publisher and author?
Yeah, certainly. If you have personal connections to a podcast show or an editor at a publication where you could publish an excerpt, then yeah, definitely utilize those connections. For most authors, those are going to be scheduled and organized by a publicist, and it just depends on what your situation is. But yeah, most authors really need that help. They need those doors open, and that is a publicist's job. So that's one of the beauties of traditional publishing. When you self-publish, you have to do all of that on your own, or you could hire a publicist for a season. When you're publishing with a major house, they provide that for you, and that's a real gift.
Okay, Will, you have walked us through this triathlon. Thank you so much for your insight, your time, your thoughts. Do you have any last words, any final bits of wisdom?
Yeah, Andy, this has been a great conversation. I was thinking this morning about what advice really makes a difference for writers. And writers by nature tend to be idealists. We love our ideas and we love nurturing them and sitting with them and dreaming big about how far they could go or how deep they could go in people's lives. And that's beautiful. I'm a dreamer along with the rest. One thing that is going to sound obvious, but I would double down on again and again, is this: ruthlessly seek feedback at all costs. I just see over and over well-meaning writers skip this step and are hoping that serendipity comes calling. There is so much growth to be had when we seek feedback. Sometimes you have to pay for it, that can be an uncomfortable conversation, but your craft and your ideas are worth investing in. So, as an example, this morning I met with a Substack coach who just lives and breathes Substack, and she looked at my profile and my pieces, and she was pointing out these gaps that I never would have seen without her. And the same is true for book proposals. This month, I'm helping two different writers refine their proposals, and it's night and day between the first draft they sent me and after several rounds of revision, what they are now going to pitch to publishers. It's night and day. So I'm both pursuing feedback myself and I have the privilege of giving it. And from both angles, I see the difference it makes. And so I would say, as writers, we should be way more afraid of stagnancy and mediocrity than feedback. That we could lean fully into that and make a habit of it. And if you don't have much expendable income, that's okay. You don't have to spend a fortune on feedback, but every once in a while, indulge yourself in paying an editor or some professional to sit with your stuff. There's conferences where you can pay $30, $40 to sit down with an editor or an agent to look at your ideas. That experience is so rich. So that's what I would leave folks with. Um, this publishing process can seem so daunting. And Andy, I don't know how many steps we mentioned. We broke it into 3 phases, but within each, there were a lot of steps. So folks might just feel like, I don't know where to begin. And one of the gifts of feedback is that we often emerge with a next step. You know, our mind is scattered. We're not sure where to devote our attention, where to focus. And good feedback is concrete, it's specific, and it's actionable. And it says, okay, here's the next thing you can do. And that will often get us much farther. One focused step is better than 1,000 scattered steps. So, yeah, ruthlessly seek feedback.
Yeah, it can be daunting, like a very long race. But similar to a race or a long journey, if you're going to have to go step by step, it helps to have a map. So I
Yeah.
feel like you laid out the whole course for us, and hopefully that is galvanizing for folks who are wherever they are in the journey. So thank you for that, Will.
Absolutely, Andy. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on and chatting. Take care.